right, welcome to episode 5 of the Heat Check podcast. We got a good one here for you guys today. Going to be talking about some of our favorite rookies that have kind of shown out in Summer League and how we think they're going to do in the league. So, without any further ado, Truty, who's a guy that really kind of stood out to you with their play in Summer League that kind of surprised you?
Well, I think that, even looking at today's game, which is going to be the Summer League Championship tonight, and by the time this is out, the game will have already been over. But Trailblazers versus Lakers, I got to go with the main man of the Portland Trailblazers. Has really been leading the way, double-double machine, and a guy who was named in the NBA All-Summer League first team, Caleb Swanigan. Now, when you look at Caleb Swanigan and his story, there's a lot to be said about his work ethic early on in his career, both in college and prior to that in high school, losing so much weight, and now he's at a slim, about 250, 260 looking player, 6'9", 6'10 frame, pretty lengthy in all honesty, but it's what he can do on the court that's just so impressive. I mean, when you watch the guy play, he is just able to do so many things really well as a big man, and obviously probably the biggest thing is the fact that now you see guys like him stretching the floor, and that's exactly what he can do, and he can do it at a high rate. He uses his body really well in the post. Really tough guy to knock off the ball. He's so strong inside. You see him dominate a lot of guys inside the paint, and in terms of shooting on the perimeter, he's a tough guard because he can shoot the mid-range, and that's the thing that really I think a lot of people have talked about can be a difference maker for him in the future if he ever ends up being a consistent starter. Not sure if he's going to basketball around, getting the ball, catching the ball, and using his body really efficiently. I mean, he does not look slow-footed at all for a guy as strong and big as he is, which is really impressive. And like I mentioned earlier, double-double machine, really good work ethic in terms of getting rebounds, a ton of power going to the basket on offense, and really fun to watch. So I have to say Caleb Swanigan immediately is a guy I think of when I think of the best rookies early on, especially in Summer League play.
So do you think that he'll be able to kind of make an impact from the get-go out there with guys like Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum for the Blazers?
I feel like he can for sure. I don't know how fast they want to roll with him, though, and I don't know if what his position will be like for them. I don't know if he's considered a center, a power forward. What do you think is he considered? Is he considered a center?
I'd probably play him at the power forward position. I don't know if he's quite big enough to really bang down low with some of the bigger, better centers in the league.
He's not quite tall enough either, yeah.
And like you said, he can kind of step out and hit the mid-range and even the three ball a little bit. So I think he can slide in at that power forward position.
Yeah. His rebounding is what's really impressive to me. I mean, with Portland, you have a guy like probably Al-Farouq Aminu starting at the power forward position for them right now.
Yeah, Aminu's there.
Yeah.
And Myers Leonard is also there. Alan Crabb, guys like that. So it'd be a welcome change to their front court, I think, to add a guy like that who's just so tenacious on the boards.
Obviously, the backcourt you have with Lillard and McCollum, I mean, having Nurkic and Swanigan, if they can ever get established and connected, that can be really deadly in the West, which is crazy to think about, just another team to deal with. But it's going to see how he does in the NBA because, they could use him for sure, and see a guy able to get those rebounds the way he can.
Yeah, I agree. It's in a league that's kind of trending towards the perimeter. It's important to have a guy like that on your team who can, kind of dominate the paint, grab those boards, and get started on the fast break. The more defensive.
He just seems like a crazy combination of a guy that could be like a big man inside, but he also has the ability to hit the mid-range shot, to hit the three-point shot, and to stretch you out. It's like a very good combination of a player that you would absolutely love to have in today's game. So, if they got great guys in the perimeter, make them bang inside. If they got some good players inside the post, make them defend you on the perimeter. So I feel like he's really versatile in that area offensively, which I think will make him a tough guard in the league.
So you think adding a guy like Swanigan might be able to make sure the Blazers keep their playoff spot?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. Again, this year it just depends. Sometimes some guys aren't able to adapt to the league as fast as others. So if he can, he might have an immediate impact, but in the future for sure, because Lillard and McCollum, they're still in their primes of their careers, and they will continue to be pretty good. And Nurkic's health is probably one of the biggest factors in keeping Portland's playoff hopes alive for years to come.
Yeah, talking about playoff spots, I kind of want to talk about a guy that got drafted. One of the only guys that's really going to make a huge impact for a playoff team, I think, this year. It's going to be Jayson Tatum. Number 3 to the Boston Celtics. I'm really impressed with what Tatum's been able to do in this summer league. I knew he was a good scorer coming in. I didn't know he was this good and this polished offensively already. He just looked straight up better than he did at Duke. I think the 4 months off before the draft did him good. Coming in, he's got the most polished offensive game in this draft class, I think. I don't think it's particularly close. There could be an argument made for Fultz just because of how all-around Fultz's game is. Mm-hmm. But from a getting buckets standpoint, it's got to be Tatum. He's already got several moves in his pocket that he can bust out at the NBA level. He's got his post fadeaway, that little turnaround jump shot he's got. He's also got a pretty deadly step back that he showcased a couple times, especially in the short corner right after he gets switched onto a big man or something like that.
Top it up and unders on occasion from the post as well.
Right, his footwork, that's another big thing that I noticed about him. His footwork, it reminds me of Carmelo Anthony, the way that he just kind of bullies guys in the post, and he just has such an array of moves and counter moves that he can go to, similar to a guy like Kobe or Paul Pierce, just those guys that were generational scorers from the post. He just has that look about him, He has such a high release on his shot. He releases it above his head. His arms are so long that it makes it really, really tough to guard, and it makes it ideal for the mid-range jumper and those post fadeaways. What do you think about Tatum going number 3?
I absolutely think he's going to be a great addition for the Celtics. It's crazy because there's a lot of really wing players to work with in Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, even Semi Ojeleye, who they ended up getting. I don't know if he was undrafted or not. I think they actually did draft him, but they got a lot of guys with that type of length to be able to work with. And Tatum is offensively, like you mentioned, the guy is a handful to deal with, and a very young player, obviously, but with his arsenal of moves already, on display in summer league, he's only going to get better with time. And that is an interesting thing about his shot. It is really tough to block, and I think he's a little bit even taller than people might even give him credit for. He's just got very a lengthy and wiry feel about him, very tough to guard in general, which makes him, seems like it's so easy at times for him to score the basketball. And in the post also, that's something that Boston could for sure use, a guy that can kind of score in those one-on-one situations, whose name isn't Isaiah Thomas, because, Tatum can use the post and some of his moves to help Boston out in general and just scoring the basketball. So I don't know. We've talked about Brad Stevens and how he has a tendency not to play rookies as much. We'll see what happens this year, but it seems like Boston really made the right decision. I see Gordon Hayward as well.
Yeah. That's another thing about Tatum that I kind of noticed. He's not always going to be your best playmaker. A lot of times he's looking for his own shot. That being said, when you're playing next to a guy like Isaiah Thomas, Gordon Hayward, those guys are going to do enough creating for everyone else. He's not going to need to be the best playmaker on the floor or anything like that. When he's out there, I think he's just going to be able to focus on doing what he does best, and that's score the basketball. Defensively, there's a little bit to be desired. He's not a great defender. He's a little slow, I think.
I think the fortunate part is that Boston is relatively deep in that way. I think Jaylen Brown is the guy that can be like, okay, this is a situation where we need a guy, defensively to be in the game. Let's get Jaylen in there or somebody else other than Jayson Tatum, because we know that Tatum's strong suit is to score, and Brown's might be to play defense on some of the tougher players. So that could be a mindset they go with, and that really helps out Boston a lot, the depth they have, and being able to move guys around depending on the situation in the game.
Can you imagine putting Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum, combining them as one player, how unstoppable that guy would be?
Yeah, early on, that's like a LeBron James type looking player. Obviously, Tatum has a more polished jump shot than LeBron James really has ever had, early on especially, so that would be insane.
Yeah, he looks really good. I'm excited to see. I think he can get, Stevens doesn't always play his rookies in the beginning of the year. He kind of makes them earn that spot, But I think once the All-Star break rolls around, I think Tatum's really going to find his rhythm. He'll kind of know what it takes to get open at the NBA level, and he'll just do his thing. And I think he can give them solid minutes, maybe 10, 12 minutes a game in the playoffs, at times when they just need to go bucket for bucket with Cleveland, which is obviously going to be the goal, preferably in the Eastern Conference Finals. So,
yeah, that actually brings me to the next point. Speaking of conference finals, you talked about a player that can immediately make an impact for a team and Jayson Tatum in the Celtics, but also another player that will likely play a role on a absolutely playoff contending team is Jordan Bell of the Golden State Warriors. And, we saw him post a 5-by-5 against Minnesota, I believe, a couple games back in the Summer League. His defensive versatility is really incredible. And I remember on draft night when I saw that Golden State was able to acquire Jordan Bell from Chicago via a buyout of some sorts, I was like, are you kidding me? This guy was unbelievable in college. His rebounding ability was phenomenal. Defensively, he could guard smaller players and bigger guys. Incredible athleticism. It was remarkable to me that they were able to pick him up because he's a guy that can come off the bench as such a good player defensively for that team. And I don't know how they were able to pick him up, but they were. And he's looking like another great addition for the Golden State in the offseason.
His all-around game, who really more embodies his, like, who's another player that's comparable to him in the league but Draymond Green? You know what I'm saying? For him to be able to be mentored by Draymond, obviously Draymond's going to make a huge impact on his defense. But, you look at Draymond, he's a fantastic rebounder. He's a great passer, probably one of the better passing forwards in the league. His defense is insane. And he's been getting better every year shooting the three ball. Just having Jordan Bell being able to sit behind a guy like that for the next 2 or 3 years of his career and just learn from him should do wonders for his all-around game. I'm excited. Yeah. As a Warriors fan, it's really exciting to have a guy like Bell on there. When you're drafting at the end of the first round, into the second round, it's hard to find guys that can come in and make an impact immediately, especially on a team as stacked as Golden State.
Yeah. But he's really a guy that can.
And we've done it 2 years in a row now. I'm a huge fan of Patrick McCaw. I think that he is going to turn out to be close to an all-star in this league just because he's shown that he can, score the basketball. He makes smart decisions, and he knows his place on the court. You didn't see him taking any stupid shots when he was out there with KD and Steph. He's always trying to set those guys up. To get another guy like that in the draft that can improve your team is a phenomenal job by the Warriors front office. I'm really impressed with what they've been able to do. To go 16-1 in the playoffs, and win in the finals in 5 games, and then add 3 guys to your team that are unquestionable upgrades, fantastic.
Yeah. The Jordan Bell, it was incredible. I mean, this guy was a player that I thought for sure would not be able to fall into the hands of a team that basically that's their almost number one need. I mean, you can never obviously have enough defense, so he's another player to add defensively, but also rebounding the basketball. I mean, Golden State is not known for rebounding at all, and Jordan Bell, that's one of his greatest assets. So it was just an incredible pickup, in all honesty, for the value of it and for where they got him.
Yeah, I'm still kind of amazed. Why? It's funny. This is crazy, and I don't know how much of it is true, but this is what I heard. So the owner of the Bulls also has a major stake in the Cubs, if I'm correct. Mm-hmm. And Chicago traded Bell for $3.5 million, give or take. That same day, the Cubs used $3.7 million to sign one of their young guys from the minors. So there's been speculation that the Bulls owner traded Jordan Bell for a baseball player.
It's a possibility.
Nah, I don't know, but I think that's funny to think about.
They for sure have more faith in their baseball franchise in the Cubs than they do in the Bulls at the moment. I mean, based on what's been happening and the success of each individual franchise.
Did we ever think that we would say that the Cubs would be more relevant to the city of Chicago than the Bulls?
I mean, it's crazy the way things turn.
All right, so.
But I guess you're going. You have another player though, right?
Yeah, I want to kind of transition into guys that aren't going to make impacts on playoff teams probably this year.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about De'Aaron Fox. Now, You and I have talked about him before. We both kind of compared him to John Wall just from that, quickness and speed standpoint that he has.
Yeah.
But I was watching some highlights of him. There was a couple things that stood out to me, some game film. And I came away impressed with a couple things. One, his handle. His handle is a lot tighter than I expected. He doesn't look like a guy that plays out of control and is going to lose the ball a lot. He keeps the ball on a string. If a defender's going to jump out on him on a screen, he has a variety of moves that he can go to escape from that. And even when he's flying down the court in transition, it always seems like he's in control of his dribble. He's not a threat to lose the ball off his foot or maybe throw it too far in front of him and get it stripped. I was really impressed with the way that he was just able to keep the ball in front of him and really kind of maneuver his way through the lane and finish at the rim despite how fast he was going. His jumper looks good. Coming out of college, that was probably the biggest question for him. Much like John Wall, both kind of Kentucky guards that come out couldn't really shoot but were super fast. Fox's jumper looks good. He's not going to be a knockdown shooter by any means, but I think teams are going to have to respect him. They're not going to duck him on screens. And if he gets left open on the perimeter off a catch-and-shoot three or coming off a screen, he should have the green light to go ahead and pull it. He did it a couple times in Summer League. He had some contested pull-up jumpers in the mid-range, and he hit them for the most part, and I was impressed. So that was something that was unexpected coming out. I didn't think his jumper would be as polished as it is. Have you seen enough? Like, what do you think about Fox down in Sacramento?
Well, for me, De'Aaron Fox, I mean, we both kind of hit it on the head. We've both been talking about De'Aaron Fox and his abilities and what he can really do. And we talked about comparing him to Lonzo Ball in terms of the success that each one may have in the future. But when you take a look at De'Aaron Fox, obviously the things that stand out, we talked about the speed is absolutely really nice. And one of the things that I think he could really develop and could be, really nice at is a thing that Russell Westbrook has really perfected, and that's, the dribble pull up in the mid-range and hitting that shot. His quickness in getting players off balance when attacking them is rare, basically unparalleled between a lot of the guys that he's competing with right now in the draft and obviously the summer league. It's so fast, so quick, and has so much acceleration in his game that because he can drive guys off balance, it allows him to move laterally and get some separation from guys and get some of those mid-range jumpers off. And in general, I mean, he's going to be a solid player for this team. His passing isn't even that bad at this point. That's another aspect of his game that he's obviously going to want to continue to work on as a point guard in the league. But I think there's not much else to really discuss about De'Aaron Fox. I mean, he's an athletic monster. It's going to be really tough to contain him defensively because of his incredible speed off the pick and roll. If he gets to just some open space, he's going to be able to go through some gaps in the defense and really, penetrate and cause some issues. And one of the things I also noticed about him is I think he's pretty lengthy for a point guard. I think that's a little bit underrated about him. I think he's about 6'3", 6'4". It almost seems like he's 6'5" on the court sometimes. That's how lengthy he looks, but maybe it's just how skinny he is. He probably will need to bulk up a little bit, like we've mentioned with a lot of guys, to be honest with you. But I'm really excited about watching him play, and he's probably going to be – a lot of people even discussed about him being potentially the best player of the draft. So that's high praise there. Who knows what's going to happen, but people are definitely attracted to his speed.
And an underrated aspect of guys that are as quick as him, I think he really has potential to lead this rookie class in scoring. And because, like we talked about, his jumper is a little more polished, so he'll hit a couple jumpers a game possibly. But when you have a guy that's that quick and is able to get that much separation off the dribble, he's going to draw a ton of fouls. I was watching him in the Summer League. He was aggressive in the paint, and he got a lot of calls, and I think that's not something that's just a Summer League thing. I think that's going to continue at the next level. I think he's going to shoot a lot of free throws just because we know he's going to attack in transition with his speed, and we know he's going to get crafty in the lane. And so when you have a guy like that, Westbrook obviously is kind of a guy that is known for his speed and his transition and his attacking the rim, and he shoots a ridiculous amount of free throws a game. The same goes for John Wall. So I think he's gonna score a lot of points. I think he's a perfect fit next to Buddy Hield in that Sacramento backcourt. Hield is an off-ball shooter kind of guy, doesn't really need the ball in his hands to be effective, and is okay with being like a true shooting guard. He doesn't need to be a point guard for the team anymore. So I'm excited. I think this is the year that Sacramento really starts to turn it around. I can see maybe 30 wins. They might get past 30 for the second time in the last decade.
One more thing I'd like to add about De'Aaron Fox before we move on is the fact that I actually thought that watching him play, he did seem like a guy as a point guard who was leading his team. He actually seemed like a guy just straight away was helping his guys, guiding his players. You could see him talking a lot and they showcased that on the summer league. I remember watching him against Phoenix, really helping out guys. Just simple stuff that you expect out of guys who are veterans in the league, but he was already starting to do stuff like that. High-fiving guys, telling them, instructing them in certain ways, and just communicating with players. And that's such an underrated element of a point guard's ability that people really don't think about. But it's something that he's looking like he's already trying to develop, which is extremely important, especially as such a young player in the NBA.
Yeah, I noticed that too. He's incredibly vocal on the court, especially on defense, which is always something that's good to have. You always hear coaches talking about getting guys to talk. It doesn't really matter what you say, just that you're saying something, getting guys in position. And he showed that. That's something that we haven't really seen out of a lot of point guards coming out of this draft. Lonzo Ball is pretty quiet on the court. Same with Markelle Fultz. So I think it's interesting to see just how kind of different a breed Fox is from those other guys. He's more of an alpha dog, attacking kind of guy. It's going to be really verbal, really vocal, and I'm excited. I can't wait to see how he does his rookie year in the league. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, it absolutely should be a lot of fun to watch. And I'm going to go quickly touch on a player who's also a guard out of the Western Conference as well. And it's going to be Donovan Mitchell. And this is a guy I've really just started to watch a lot of. And it's kind of crazy because you watch a guy like Dennis Smith Jr. and you talk about explosion. And Donovan Mitchell has some really nice explosiveness about him as well. Really getting to the basket and scoring at such a really incredible, efficiency in terms of just how powerful he is on these guys. I mean, it's really tough player to guard. And also defensively is an aspect of his game, and getting steals and being a hassle to deal with. That really is going to be a problem. And it just adds another element to the Utah Jazz's game. Obviously, they're probably not going to be incredible in terms of what they can do in the playoffs, or if they can actually make the playoffs. But in the future, this team should be one of the best defensively. They pick up Tatum, Ricky Rubio. So, again, they're going to be very good defensively. You don't know how much of that will translate to winning success. But Mitchell's a guy that really seems to bring it on both ends and doesn't have a lot of gaps in his game in my eyes. Obviously, as a shooter, he's more of an attacking player towards the basket. He can knock down some shots, so we'll see how that develops for him. But defensively, I was really impressed with his ability to really be very active in getting steals and making plays to disrupt possessions all around. So that was really impressive to me, and he's a guy I would look out for if I was a Jazz fan or just watching a lot of Western Conference games.
I think that Utah's going to be a team that's going to give everybody a lot more problems this year than we give them credit for. Obviously, losing Hayward is going to be a blow, but Rubio's a guy that generally runs a high-powered offense no matter who he's on the court with. So, and that defense, wow. Ricky Rubio, obviously a fantastic defender. Rudy Gobert, probably the best defensive center in the league, coming in second in Defensive Player of the Year voting. They added Thabo Sefolosha. Now they add Donovan Mitchell, a guy who he's just a pest, man.
Very active hands.
Incredibly active hands. I actually didn't get to watch a lot of him until he had that.
You should definitely stay tuned and watch some highlights of him in the summer league. It's really fun to watch, and he's a really solid player, to be honest with you. Even offensively, some of the things he was doing, very Westbrook-esque as well. There's a lot of guys trying to develop that mid-range pull-up game. Maybe a little bit out of control at times, but that's some things that a lot of rookies tend to have.
Yeah, I know he had a huge explosion in the summer league, 37 points and 8 steals in the first half, or in 2.5 quarters, something like that. So when you got a guy that can make that big of an impact on the defensive end, it's always going to be a bonus for your team. And he's not going to be given the reins right away in Utah, so he's going to be able to develop and kind of take his time and work on his game the way it needs to be worked on. I think he can end up being a pretty substantial steal for the Utah Jazz. I think they made a solid pick, especially knowing that they might lose Hayward. I think the Jazz are going to be in better hands than people think.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. He's just been really fun to watch, to be honest with you. And the Jazz, again, we have talked about it. They're really not as in a bad shape as I think some people think that they are with the pickups of Rubio and Sefolosha. But losing Hayward that's a player that was so great for them, scoring the basketball on a consistent basis. They're gonna miss that for certain.
Yeah. So while we're on the topic of explosive guards, I think there's really one name that's going to come to mind here when you talk about explosive guards from this draft. That's Dennis Smith Jr., going 9th overall to the Dallas Mavericks. This guy, in any other draft, he's a top 3 talent, and in any other draft, he's probably the best point guard in the draft.
Yeah.
And he went 9th, which just speaks to, the depth of this draft class this year. Obviously, a ton of talented point guards. Fox, Markelle Fultz, Lonzo Ball. You have Frank Ntilikina, who went 1 pick before Dennis Smith Jr. to the New York Knicks. So that being said, I think he has the potential to be the best point guard from this draft. And I know we can say that about pretty much all the point guards in this draft, but I really mean it with him. It's incredible to me how much he reminds me of Derrick Rose. It really is. It's almost scary. Just the way that I see him, the way that he flies in the paint. It's like every time he's in there, he's going for some poster dunk or some acrobatic finish. One of the things that I haven't heard many people talk about, but I think is a really nice surprise, is how well he can finish with both hands. I saw a couple plays with him, and I was really impressed at how he's able to maneuver himself in the lane. And he's not shy with finishing with his left hand. He's a right-handed shooter and kind of a dominant right-hand kind of guy. But once he gets in the paint, if he's being kind of pushed to the left side, maybe by a help defender or whatnot, he has no problem going up with his left and finishing, and it really looks natural to him. And to have a guy like that, John Wall is another guy like that who can just really finish from anywhere in the paint on either side with either hand. And, that's a big thing for a guard to have, especially in today's league when they're going up against rim protectors like Rudy Gobert, DeAndre Jordan, guys like that. There are a couple concerns, and I think that's why he fell to 9th. I think he's probably comparable to a prospect as Fox. I don't think that Fox was so much better than Smith Jr. in college that he deserved to go 5 spots ahead of him. But the concern with Dennis Smith Jr., and this is where the D-Rose comparisons ring even more true. He's had some injury problems in the past. Obviously the ACL injury a couple years ago. And while it doesn't look like it hampered him too bad, I'm really worried about the way that he lands. He's such a high-flying kind of guy, and it just makes me nervous the way that he lands. He seems out of control when he hits the ground, putting a lot of pressure on his knees and his ankles. And if he doesn't fix that, it's not going to take much before one of those things gives out, and we might be talking about him as the next Derrick Rose in terms from an injury standpoint. So I think that's the reason for his slide in the draft. But if he can go ahead and tweak that, I don't know.
His explosiveness definitely is really off the charts when you look at him play a lot of times. Going to the basket, his ability to finish the basketball really does remind you of D Rose a lot, because it almost seems like he rarely misses when he drives to the lane. Even as a jump shooter, he was doing very well. Had some really nice footwork also in the post on occasion to make guys kind of slide and fly by him because he has so much explosiveness. I was able to use that turnaround jumper a little bit at times. And obviously we see the explosiveness and a little bit of his passing ability. But I think you hit it right on the head. Injuries are probably the biggest concerns for him, because if not, no doubt about it.
Yeah, another big criticism of coming out of college was people didn't really know if he could be, that distributor and that kind of pass first player you look for in a point guard, especially with a guy like Rick Carlisle's offense. But there's some, like we talked about it last night. You need to kind of bring in context when you're comparing players and whatnot from past eras and even in current eras. Context is important. When we looked at him in college, he had a pretty mediocre team around him at NC State. Not a lot of guys that are going to be able to really even have a shot at competing at an NBA level. It was pretty much the Dennis Smith Jr. show. And so when you have teammates like that, it can be really tough to set them up and have those high assist numbers that we equate with, vision and being a good passer. I was surprised at his play in Summer League how well he was getting his teammates involved. seeing him kind of play with NBA caliber guys, I think really opened our eyes to how good of a passer he can be when he's passing the guys that know what to do with the ball. His vision is an underrated aspect of his game. He looked good to me in the pick and roll in transition. He found some open guys. So I don't think that that's going to be as big a concern. And his jump shot, too. I was surprised at his jump shot. It looks really fluid, really fast, especially off the catch and shoot. So he's not going to be – I think he's already poised to be a better shooter than Rose. As we all know, Rose is an atrocious three-point shooter. So to have a guy like Dennis Smith and, him having that jump shot already coming into the league, I think is a big plus. So if he can keep the injuries under control, maybe tweak his landing a little bit and flourish under Carlisle, he could very well end up being the best player out of this draft. That's how deep this is.
I would like to add with Dennis Smith Jr. that the fit in Dallas, because I know the Mavericks roster pretty well over the past couple of years, the fit with him in Dallas is actually probably the best they could have hoped for. When you think about the Dallas Mavericks and what they are as a team, basically they've really kind of been an aging team for the past couple of years. And last year they go and pick up Harrison Barnes, the guy that they think can be kind of their future player, and was a slasher, so that helped them. They didn't have a lot of guys that could really penetrate and attack. Harrison Barnes started to develop a little bit of a more consistent jumper. Now they have a point guard who can penetrate. Last year they didn't have that. J.J. Brea, Yogi Ferrell, Devin Harris, all kind of guys that weren't quite just powerful enough and and had as much explosiveness to really penetrate and get some open shots for some of their players like Wesley Matthews, like Dirk, and getting Nerlens Noel involved. Who knows if he's part of their future, but getting those types of players involved. Dennis Smith is the epitome of a guy that can attract attention, and if he learns to distribute the ball, Dallas is automatically a better team, and that's exactly what they're looking for in the future, regardless of whether or not Dirk can play for a couple more years and they then have a real chance at winning a title, because the West is so stacked at the moment. But it's a great building block for them, in my opinion, especially, they're hoping for him to be a durable player. Who knows if that will happen, but he's looking pretty good right now, and I really like the fit with him in Dallas and their roster and what they're trying to build there.
If you're Dallas, if you're Mark Cuban and in the Dallas Mavericks, would you throw max money at Nerlens Noel?
I would not throw max money at Nerlens Noel, because I think Dallas also is trying to possibly make a pitch for a guy like DeMarcus Cousins, and I don't think what Noel adds is too specific that they need to throw money at him. I don't know if it's that valuable to them to really go after him that hard. He hasn't shown so much to them that they need to do that, so I would not expect them to throw max money at Nerlens Noel at all.
Yeah, I agree.
Doesn't seem like Mark Cuban's style either.
I agree. I think that what Noel brings, defensively, obviously he's a great guy, but his offensive game is limited, and I don't know if you want to just be spending so much money on a guy that's really only effective on one end of the court. So, talking about a guy that actually, I think we're into your next player.
Yeah, we've covered three main guys I wanted to cover were Swanigan, Mitchell, and then obviously went to Dennis Smith. You went into Jayson Tatum a little bit, Fox. We also talked about Jordan Bell. Those are my three guys. For another player, I don't know if I really want to go into Lonzo Ball. Do you have another player in particular that you want to cover right now?
I was actually going to bring up Lonzo.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about Fultz, but obviously the ankle injury makes it kind of tough to gauge just how well he was going to do in Summer League. Philadelphia not wanting to risk it. So it's tough to talk about him. I will say this. Fultz reminds me a lot of Tracy McGrady. The way that they play, there's kind of the same style. They're both really smooth guys. They don't look all that athletic when they're on the court, but they just kind of get to their spots and do their thing, and that's one of the things that made McGrady so much fun to watch. Was it just felt like he couldn't really be stopped, and I kind of get that sense from Fultz. He's just going to do his thing. You and I were talking earlier about him and Simmons kind of looking like a store brand version of LeBron and Kyrie, just with the point forward thing and the secondary ball handler that's going to take over the main scoring duties. I think Fultz can do that. He's got a workable jump shot, mid-range and three-pointer. He can rebound the ball. He's not a liability on defense, and he's a great passer. So I'm excited to see what he can do in Philly, but just we didn't get to see enough of him to really go in depth on him here on the podcast. Lonzo.
I agree, but I think he's in a good position in the future. Just touching on Fultz, I do think that what he's got going with Philadelphia, barring any injuries, is a pretty good setup for where he's going.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Simmons and Embiid can stay healthy. That's a pretty solid trio moving forward. That's impressive. I can't wait to see what they're going to do with that. I cross my fingers and I pray every night that Embiid and Simmons stay healthy because I want to see a good Sixers team. But to talk about Lonzo Ball, there's a couple things that are really, 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 really good about him, and there's a couple things that aren't. And so it's a matter of how much do you weigh the good versus the bad. I think coming in right now, he might be a top 5 passer in the NBA. And I know that seems like I'm overreacting to the Summer League game maybe, or, it's a bit melodramatic, but I watched him and he just is so much fun to watch, just from a pure passing standpoint. In a league where we're trending towards more of these scoring point guards, it kind of started in 2011 with Derrick Rose, guys that are looking to get their points first, and then once the defense is collapsing on them, then they kick out for shooters and set their teammates up. Lonzo Ball is the exact opposite of that. He's a guy that goes out there and isn't really looking for his own shot. If it's there, he'll take it, and if he feels like he needs to score, he will. But generally, he's content to sit back and just let other guys do their thing and set him up, especially in transition. He's a guy that would be content going out there and scoring 2 points but having 15, 16 assists. And the thing about it is he doesn't do a lot of his passing damage in the half court. He's not, this transcendent pick and roll talent. He's not great at finding cutters like Ben Simmons is, but the way that he passes the ball in transition, how fast he gets the ball out of his hands, is unlike any other player in the league, I think, at the point guard position. The ball is in his hands on a fast break for probably less than a second, 2 seconds at the most. I don't know if I've seen a player with his touch on full court passes, except for maybe like Kevin Love and his outlet passes. Just the way that he seems to drop it on a dime every time. And, it's not like he's passing the guys like, Julius Randle or Brandon Ingram here in Summer League. He's throwing to second rounders like Kyle Kuzma, So I can't wait to see what he's going to do with some guys that actually excel at running the court. Now, his defense is kind of concerning. And by his defense, I mean the complete lack of it. It doesn't look like he could guard a gust of wind that blew through the stadium. So that's a concern. His jump shot, obviously, the form is a little funky, and he can't shoot it off the dribble. So I don't know if he's ever going to evolve into this, mix of a scoring point guard and a passing point guard. But I think that's okay. They're going to have scorers on the team. Obviously, they have Brandon Ingram, who's looking like he's going to turn into a capable scorer at all 3 levels. You're going to have guys like Brook Lopez. Julius Randle's a great scorer, great rebounder. And then, LA is always a threat to pull in some free agents like LeBron, DeMarcus Cousins, Russell Westbrook, Paul George, all guys that can be number 1 scoring options. So I don't think it's a huge deal that Lonzo's not a great scorer. I think his thing is passing the ball, and he does that better than any rookie in this class for sure, and maybe better than anyone in the league from a transition standpoint.
Yeah, I'm with you on that for sure. I think that it could be ugly in terms of the media attention for him this year, because I don't think that they'll have a lot of options for him to go to that will be consistent scorers, because I think he may be asked to do some things that he's really not going to be comfortable doing, which is being a scoring option that they need at times. Because, Brandon Ingram, obviously he's going to try and develop and be that guy, but I think it'll be tough because I think he'll be asked to score at times. I don't think he can really produce too much, but we'll see. Maybe he can at times in Summer League. He really showed that he can score the basketball pretty well, but passing the ball for sure. And once he gets some more playmakers around him, everything will just become easier for him, and he'll get guys involved. And again, it has been mentioned a lot, but it does look like it's a fun player to play with. He likes to get other players. rising up again.
Yeah, it kind of froze. I lost you when you were talking about how he makes other guys want to run the court. Like, he makes guys want to play with him. If you want to, like, redo
Oh,
that.
yeah. Well, I just feel like, yeah. His, I like the way that he pushes the tempo for this team in general. I think that he allows for easy baskets to be made. And, again, I'm looking for – I thought he was a lot of fun to watch in general in the Summer League. I didn't think that he was going to be as fun to watch as I thought, but he really seemed like he was having fun passing the basketball. And I think when you see teams that pass the basketball well, that's when basketball is at its best. So he made it look really fun, and I'm looking.
Yeah, for a guy, a guy like Lonzo and his passing ability, you'll hear a lot of guys say that his passing is contagious, and I think that is probably the best trait that a point guard can have.
Yes.
You and I think, are the same mind here, that basketball is at its best when it's, free flowing. Guys are making the extra pass, passing up good shots for a great shot, looking for the open guy, and not necessarily trying to play hero ball that we see so often in today's NBA. So for a guy like Lonzo to pass the ball the way he does, he makes his teammates want to pass the ball. It's a culture. Not often are you going to see a rookie that can come in and have such an immediate impact on a team's culture that Lonzo's had. And it's already evident in Summer League. You were having guys finding cutters. You were having guys sharing the ball in transition. Nobody was trying to really take over. Nobody was trying to be the guy. Everybody just wanted to put points on the board. It didn't matter who did it. And so that's what Lonzo does. That's what he brings to your team. He's a guy that makes you want to run. He makes you want to get open because you know that he'll find you and he'll get you buckets. I think it's an underrated aspect of this draft pick by the Lakers because, they've kind of struggled drawing free agents in the past. But when you have a guy like Lonzo, who doesn't want to play with a guy like that? Who doesn't want to play with a guy that's okay being, kind of taking a step back and letting you score, making sure that you get your points, making sure you look good. That's going to be a big draw for some guys. I think that Lonzo's going to be a guy that draws a lot of players to LA just because of the fact that they want to play with him.
The league is right now basically it's all scoring guards. Really, all the scoring point guards are taking a lot of attention away from the players. You got James Harden, Steph Curry, Russell Westbrook. Those guys are score first point guard players. And Lonzo Ball flips the script on that, and he has a potential to actually be a guy that's not a score first point guard while also being a star in the league, which is something that I'm really looking forward to because maybe he even will influence some of the younger players of the United States generation and trying to get some people to pass the basketball more because he seems like he can have that big of an impact already with how much attention he's really drawn via Twitter and TV and social media as a whole. So I'm really looking forward to him continuing to be a good player and hopefully helping LA rise up because I really want to see him on the big stage at a successful level.
Yeah, I love Steph Curry, but just the epidemic that's going across like YMCA gyms across the country where every guy thinks they have the green light to pull from 30, it drives me absolutely nuts. So that's a good point that you have. Hopefully Lonzo will bring about a change in America where people will try to pass the ball a little bit in pickup games. So I didn't think about that. That's a good one. So think we're about to wrap it up. One more thing I want to toss out there. Is there anybody that you were not impressed by in Summer League? Guys that you really thought would have a bigger impact?
One guy in particular that I thought would have been more impressive was, or I would have not really necessarily that I thought was going to be, but I really hoped was going to be more impressive. And I'd also like to mention two other names after this, but Lauri Markkanen was a guy that I really wanted him to show out. He really didn't. He struggled at times. Was very inconsistent from three-point land. Really struggled there. Part of his game that he needs to showcase in order to be effective in this league. So I was disappointed in his play. I thought he maybe could have even came out a little bit early, but because he has such an upside, you knew that he was going to go in the first round in this year's draft.
Yeah, I thought that was a poor choice by the Bulls. I thought there was better players on the market. Obviously, Malik Monk was still on the board. Big fan of Malik. Everybody knows that. Yeah. But then you have guys like, Dennis Smith Jr. that were still there that could have been taken, which would have even furthered the Derrick Rose comparisons. So I wasn't a big fan. I hope that he can prove me wrong. He looks like he has the potential to be a pretty great shooter. But other than that, I really just don't see what constituted him to be the 7th pick overall. Like, what was he supposed to bring? He doesn't look like he's ever going to be like a number 1 guy, right? Am I crazy in saying that?
I think that their hope is that he is. I think that their hope is that he becomes a guy who can dominate in the post in terms of shooting the basketball, can stretch the floor, while also being, solid on defense with his length. So I think that that's probably, if you don't take a guy number 7, if you don't think that he can become an integral part of your future. So I'm sure they probably thought he was going to be a big piece. So we'll see what happens.
So they want him to be Porzingis, basically.
Yeah, I'm assuming they want him to be Porzingis.
Yeah, I think everybody wants a Porzingis.
Yeah, and the 2 other guys I wanted to mention real quick is Bam Adebayo from the Heat. I thought he showed a lot of athleticism as a big man and was even pretty impressive in the post with his scoring ability. I thought he was known more as just a shot blocker and a defensive guy, but he could really run the floor, a good rebounder, really active, and his athleticism was incredible to me as a guy who's like 6'10" with a 7-foot wingspan. So he was fun to watch. And then the last guy I was really impressed with actually was Luke Kennard out of Duke. I really liked his shooting motion. You could definitely make the argument that he's the best shooter in the draft. He looked so pure on his jump shot from three-point land and from the mid-range. It's like a formula. There's just some guys that know how to hit shots when they're open, and he is that guy. And it's really fun to watch him play. And Detroit desperately needed a guy who can score the basketball, and he's not only deadly from just jump shooting the ball, whether it's the mid-range or a three-point line, he can also drive and attack and make some plays happen. So I'm really looking forward to watching him play in Detroit, to be honest with you.
Yeah, Kennard had a lot of J.J. Redick comparisons coming out of the draft. Obviously, 2 white guys coming out of Duke, both known for shooting the 3-ball. But I think that he has more, he has a more of a slasher component to his game that J.J. didn't have. He's a guy that can get in the paint and really kind of finish. He's not just a shooter like J.J. is kind of known for.
I think it's tough to say that his upside isn't greater. He's longer, probably better, definitely defensively has more potential, and is solid defensively, not even a bad player defensively, and his athleticism really underrated. So, again, the comparisons are just purely because they're white and from Duke and are shooters, but I think it sort of ends there.
Yeah, a guy that I thought that we were going to hear more about from Summer League that really didn't make quite as big a splash as I thought he would. Number 4 to the Phoenix Suns, Josh Jackson.
Yeah.
There was a couple concerns about him coming out of college, mainly being his jump shot. But, up until the day of the draft, there was serious talks of Boston taking him number 3 over Tatum, and that's really who I thought was going to be taken. He has that superstar potential, fantastic defender. And he
looks a little bit robotic to me at times.
He looks
not quite as smooth at all. Tatum looks smooth to me. Jackson looks like he has very good athleticism, but I don't know if he can really grasp it completely yet. He sort of needs to learn how to control what he has.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think he really needs to learn how to just kind of loosen up on the court a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Just kind of play within the offense, he's great at attacking the rim. He's really athletic, so that's a big bonus there. And he's an underrated passer. That being said, he really didn't get a lot of media attention, which really surprised me. And I know when he's competing with guys like Lonzo and stuff like that, it's tough to get attention. But we talked about him earlier. Donovan Mitchell got a lot of attention in this summer league. Obviously, Lonzo, Dennis Smith, De'Aaron Fox. Not as much attention as I thought, but still a lot.
Tatum got a decent amount.
And Tatum got a ton of attention, especially from his play in the opening Summer League games. People were crowning him Summer League MVP after like 2 or 3 games. Now, obviously, that award just went to Lonzo this afternoon. But a case could have been made for Tatum. A lot of times he looked like the best player in Summer League from this draft. So I'm curious to see if Jackson can kind of put it together this first year. I think playing next to a guy like Booker is going to help, because Booker is going to take a lot of shots and be your primary offensive guy. So I want to see how Josh Jackson kind of responds to a quiet summer league.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and it'll be interesting to see how they develop in Phoenix with such a young group. Booker's like, 20 years old. I think Bledsoe will be starting at point guard. He's relatively young. He's more of a veteran guy on their team. And then you have Josh Jackson coming in, Marquise Chris. I mean, these guys are in their very early 20s, if not even 20 years old. So
Derrick Jones Jr. as well.
Yeah, so they got some very young players in Phoenix. It's going to be interesting to see how they develop. It's probably going to take some time for them to really mesh into a team that can compete.
That's going to be a really solid defensive team, though.
Yeah,
Booker's not a good defender, but Bledsoe is. Jackson is. Chris has the potential to be a great defender. Chris is just mean, man. He's got some dog in him. He's nasty.
Yeah.
And I think if he bulks up, that could be a really scary kind of perimeter wing rotation that they got going out there.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch how Phoenix develops in the upcoming years.
You know, that's one of the big things to watch is all these young cores. You know, who's going to really develop the best? You're going to have, obviously the Lakers are going.
Philly, probably. You could make an argument for Philly because they are still very young.
Right. So the Lakers are going to have their trio of, Ball, Ingram, Randall right now. They could get a lottery pick next year. In Philly, Simmons, Fultz, Sardic, and Embiid.
Yeah.
Phoenix has Josh Jackson, Marquise Chris, Devin Booker. Minnesota had, they had Zach LaVine. Now it's Andrew Wiggins and Towns. So, who do you think is going to be the best out of that group?
The best in terms of short term or long term?
Let's go long term. Do you think
a 10-year time frame?
Yeah, let's go 10 years. Which core of those four is going to pan out to be the best?
Man, that is really a tough one, man. Minnesota, LA, you said Phoenix and Philadelphia.
And you can even really throw Boston in there too. Marcus Smart is still pretty young, and they got Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Yeah. Well, I think it's hard to argue that Boston won't be the most successful early on, but in the long run, wow, that is a really tough one. It's so hard to tell because there's so much that could happen in the future. Phoenix looks pretty good, though. I mean, they're so young that you would think that over time, if they could keep that team together, they should, undoubtedly over time get better. I'll have to go with Minnesota because I feel like Karl Anthony Towns has solidified himself as that guy that really could be, a generational type player. I mean, he's already averaging 25 and 10 at such a young age. I think I'd have to go with Minnesota.
And I want to correct something that I said in an earlier podcast. I know this is kind of out of the blue, but I said Hassan Whiteside was probably the third best offensive center in the league behind it was Cousins and Anthony Davis.
Mm-hmm.
I totally forgot about Karl Anthony Towns. So I do rank Towns ahead of Whiteside, at least offensively. And I'm going to agree with you. I think Minnesota's going to pan out to be the best of that group. If I had to rank them long term, I'd probably go Minnesota, Philly, LA, Phoenix. I think
that's what's ideal at this point. That's in our mind that we all kind of think probably for the most part.
I think what really kind of gives LA the nod over Phoenix is at some point in the next 10 years, I think that LA is going to draw a big free agent, and Phoenix just really doesn't have that luxury. Who's the last big name free agent that signed with Phoenix?
I don't know, like Shaq of an aging days.
Washed up, there was Steve Nash, but that was really before he kind of blew up.
Yeah. They never really had one in particular, I don't think.
Yeah. There was talks of maybe LaMarcus Aldridge going over there, but he ended up signing with the Spurs, obviously. So LA is just a much bigger draw, and so I think that LA is going to get one of those superstars, and it's going to put them over the top.
Yeah.
At least in terms of Philadelphia, Phoenix.
Yeah. All right, so are there any other rookie players you want to cover in this rookie podcast number 5 of the Heat Check, basically covering, I guess, all rookies and kind of some of the future players of the league?
Ben Simmons is technically a rookie this year.
Yeah, Ben Simmons will be interesting to watch.
I think he's going to surprise people with a jump shot. Now, I'm a believer that he is right-handed. I know he shoots jumpers with his left, but he does everything else with his right. He even finishes with his right hand on the left side. You kind of get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
The only thing he does with his left hand is shoot jumpers, and he's not a very good shooter. So I think it wouldn't be too much of a crazy transition for him to maybe come out shooting jumpers with his right hand. But even if he doesn't, a whole season of NBA trainers and coaches helping him work on that jump shot. Obviously he's a transcendent passer. He's not a transcendent passer in the way that Lonzo is. Lonzo's more of a transition guy, and I actually have a piece coming out about this week. These are two guys that are kind of going against the grain of today's NBA. They're pass-first guys that aren't really known for scoring the basketball. Obviously, Simmons is going to be known as more of a scorer than ball. He's more athletic. He can bully guys to the rim like a young LeBron or even Giannis in today's game. But he's a better passer than Giannis for sure. His passing compares to LeBron at that age, and is probably even honestly a little bit superior. So I'm interested to see what he does. There's talks about him coming out as a primary ball handler, probably as a de facto point guard on offense, and then guarding 3s and 4s on the other end. He's a real candidate to win Rookie of the Year. I think that even if he came out of the draft this year, he would still probably go number 1 overall. I think he's a better prospect than Fultz is, just from how great he has the potential to be. So that's going to be fun to watch. Obviously, I have to give a shout-out to my guy Malik Monk. I think he's going to surprise people. The dude is a sniper, and everyone is sleeping on him. But he's going to be great. I think he has potential to be a perennial 6th man of the year contender, just a guy that comes off of the bench as your first guy off and just lights it up, scoring 20 points a game. So,
yeah, I agree on that one. Jonathan Isaac is one guy we didn't touch on. Are the top guys, and I just haven't watched him or until Linka or whoever the Knicks drafted at the point guard position. Didn't get to watch either of those guys too much. I watched a little bit of Isaac, and he looks very raw but very promising for Orlando in the future.
Nidolinka he's really long for a point guard. I watched a couple games from him. Obviously, he's playing over in France. He's really, really long. His handle, just kind of his ball control looks a little loose to me. I don't know if some of the things that he's doing in France is going to fly at the NBA level. But, the upside is there. Like I said, he's super long. He has a pretty nice jump shot. And he seems to make the right plays more often than not. So he's a guy that could he could pan out really well for New York.
Yeah. So it's going to be fun. I actually think this draft class is going to be really fun to watch this year. I mean, we know a lot about – this is probably the first years where I think a lot of people outside of just the hardcore fans really kind of know about some of these guys that aren't just the number 1 overall pick. So I'm pumped. Yeah,
this is one of the deepest draft class in years. There was a lot of talk comparing this to the 2003 draft. And honestly, it's going to be tough, for a draft to top a 3 out of the first 4 guys coming off the board in that draft: LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Carmelo Anthony. That being said, after that, there's not a ton of guys that really made a huge impact in the league. It wasn't necessarily a deep draft, and so when
Chris
we talk
Paul's
about
probably the only other big name,
right?
Big name.
Yeah, and so when we talk about this draft class, we already touched on a second round guy, Jordan Bell. That is poised to make a big impact for one of the greatest teams of all time, honestly. And then you have guys like, Fox, Jackson, Smith, Nidolinka, Malik Monk, obviously. Guys like that. Josh Collins for Atlanta had made a big splash in Summer League. We didn't really get to talk about him.
Zach Collins,
yeah, sorry. And, this looks like to be one of the deepest drafts in recent memory. And so I'm excited to see how this rookie year plays out. You want to give your top 3 Rookie of the Year voting off the top of your head?
Yeah. For top 3 Rookie of the Year voting, just the top of my head, I'd probably go with Dennis Smith Jr. number 1. I'll go with Lonzo Ball number 2, and I'll go De'Aaron for 3.
All right, I can see that. I'll go Simmons, Ball, Smith.
Okay.
Ben Simmons number 1, Lonzo Ball number 2, and Dennis Smith Jr. number 3.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, I think, but I can see why you went with Dennis Smith. He's in a good position in Dallas. There's not.
I just think he's going to get so much playing time, and he seems like he's going to make an immediate impact for them.
I think that Simmons' Rookie of the Year hopes really hinge on his jumper, how developed his jumpers become.
Yeah, that's true.
If he
Obviously,
has a
aside from
jumper,
health, yeah.
yeah, if he comes in with a workable jumper and he can shoot 43, 44% from the mid-range,
That's solid.
I
Yeah.
think he's the runaway favorite. But if he doesn't and he comes in, showing the same stuff that he did in college, not really taking any shots outside the paint, then it's going to be a pretty tight race, especially with a guy like Smith and a guy like Lonzo. Lonzo's going to get the media attention that you need to win Rookie of the Year. I just don't know if he'll have the stats to back it up.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's about all for me on this rookie class. And if is there anything else that you want to add?
Nah, I think that's just about it. I think I covered basically all the players I wanted to cover, and we as a whole covered a lot of great players coming into the draft or from the draft this year.
All right. Well, as always, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Follow us at theupdate125.wordpress.com. That link is going to be in the bio as well. We should have a couple
in the description
pieces
for the YouTube channel. Yeah, everything should be in the description. You got the blog, the website, we got Twitter, we got everything linked in there.
I think we're working on a logo too, right?
Yeah, working on a logo, working on a solid logo at the moment, so we'll get that up and running.
All right. Well, that's going to be it from us, so we'll see you guys next time.